Okay, so this was a last minute presentation for me. One of the reasons probably why they thought I would be a good person to conduct this is spent a fair amount of time in the print media, about 12 to 15 years. And we keep coming across this, when I look back at the way the situation was when I started out as a cub reporter and what it is now. There is a lot of difference in the way that we are received, in the way the work of women journalists have changed, and yet certain things remain the same. There is still a lot of opposition to some of the work we do. There is a lot of opposition to creating space for a safe space for women journalists. A lot of companies have finally realized that you need to have some institutions within the newsroom where you can protect women journalists, because despite of what we think, there are a lot of incidents that need to be tackled at the newsroom, in the newsroom. And for the first time, I would say not for the first time, but in the last couple of years, we've finally been talking about mental health. Mental health in the newsrooms, it's not just something that you write about and then pretend everything is fine with you. It is not the case. So we're talking about counseling, we are having open conversations about therapy. Like I said, these are all not newsrooms, and legacy media, as we all know, are the slowest, are the last to change. We still haven't negotiated 5-day week people, so we know there is still a lot of work happening there. But these conversations are coming in, and it's okay to talk about it now. And much as it troubles a lot of journalists, to say that, okay, I'm impacted by this, I'm affected by this. When I go on the ground and cover something very troubling or terrible, it's okay for me to be affected by it. The macho feeling that stays in the industry, especially for journalists covering news, it's okay to do your job and then come back and admit, okay, this has troubled me, this is affecting me, and then to seek solutions for that, for our own mental well-being. The presentation is very brief. I would like to be more interactive. I'm sure I was also thinking, I thought I would see some younger people as well, because a lot of women journalists who are starting out do face a lot of trouble, because there is also a huge generational gap in media organizations now as well. A lot of people with 15, 20 years of experience cannot understand their peers who are 22, 23, can't understand the way they see things, can't understand what the young ones are expecting, but it goes back, oh, but when I started, we didn't have any of this. The same generation gap that affects us. But the fact is, it does matter, because we have to mentor. We have to mentor these people to show how to go forward. So it also matters that we also understand there are some things, especially when it comes to mental health, that senior journalists will not admit. It's not okay. It's like, oh no, but we did all this, we are fine. Not fine. And it shows up in other spaces which we don't recognize is the result of that stress. So yeah, so let's take this. Yeah. So it does impact safety, stress and power dynamics and workplace behavior. This PowerPoint presentation is largely, obviously with women in mind. Some of them are applicable to men as well. The thing is, what the previous speaker was saying, that and the questions asked, that you can't keep men out of it. Conversation has to happen. Even now, the presence of women in media, especially in reporting, it's not as high as we would like.
But coming to some things,
we'll have the questions later. No, Vijay. Okay, but yeah, we'll come back. But yeah, go ahead, since you started.
Actually, some things are feeling that it's a masculine thing, women can't do.
Correct, yeah. So I'm going to come to that as well. So this part, when you are entering an organization, especially if you're entering the legacy media, or even electronic media, I have to say I don't have a lot of knowledge about how things work in electronic media. Some of you might, so my domain is print media and digital. But we do know that electronic media has some of the worst statistics in terms of women representation, coverage of news, especially current affairs, politics, and you have women largely relegated to being anchors or reporting on soft topics as they are called, features and stuff. So there is a lot of problem still in electronic. Print is also bad, especially when it comes to politics, for instance. We don't want to say that this old boys network is very, very much strong, and there is not a lot of space. There are active attempts to still turn away women from reporting actively. I mean, they start in reporting and then sometime later they are shifted to some other easier kind of section. And sometimes women do not have a choice. I say they do not have a choice is a primarily thinking they do not have a choice because their opposition is not even voiced because that is, they feel very intimidated. So it is something that you cannot just enter a newsroom and then expect that your work is going to speak for itself. Does not happen. You have to make your presence felt. You have to engage in and understand what is happening. Unfortunately, in legacy media, and this the male reporters will also agree, a lot of time goes in handling office politics. Your stress from the job and your stress in the workplace are equally hard. I mean, that is why when you have this, you're only as good as your last story. These are the things, I mean, stuff like these make you feel that pressure. But when you feel that sometimes your workplace is actively hostile. Like if you're covering, if there is to give an example, there were riots in Bangalore at one point, Bangalore court violence record, this was about 10, 12 years ago. And now what do reporters do? Everybody wants to be at the scene, everybody wants to be the one covering it. At that time, the preference is obviously given to the male journalist. Several reasons. Safety is number one reason used for it. But that is not true. It is not safe. It is because there are too many people vying to be the one person going there, and it's usually the male reporter chosen because your management thinks that if something happens, better be a guy. We don't want something to happen. We don't want that responsibility. We don't want anything to. So it's a very strong patriarchal mindset we have. It is very difficult to. So this, why we say be cognizant of it, is also to know how these things work and then challenge it. There are not always, it is not always successful when you challenge, but the point is to challenge it repeatedly, not stop, just go, keep challenging it. And yeah, we'll come to boundaries. So we just took this, I wanted to talk about it because like I said earlier, we do deal with a lot of young men and women who come. Women especially, now they don't realize, that they can actually say no to something. It's when you're in the job, you want to come in, a woman feels just by if you look at the demography of the newsroom, there are so many men, there are so many people already in senior positions who are inevitably men. There are women, but much fewer. So they don't think they have any place to set any kind of boundaries or talk about any kinds of constraints that they might have. If I am being sent, as a fresher, I'm being sent to some place which I feel is not okay for me, I have to voice it out. But why do such reasons exist? It can be religious and caste implications. If you are going to a place to cover communal rights, say for example between Hindu and Muslim, and if you are a Muslim reporter, you have a right to think, how safe am I going to be there? It is possible, because it does happen. And if you look at it at a Hindu-Muslim riots, statistics tells you that inevitably it is the Hindus who will have an upper hand. Eventually, it is always the Muslims who are going to be at the receiving end. So if I'm a Muslim reporter going out there, am I going to be safe? Safety is a primary concern. Why I say this is, we spoke about how the attitudes. Women face extra scrutiny everywhere they go. It can be a government office. It can be a private player. It can be a situation where there is violence is broken out. They always face extra scrutiny. Go to a cop. First question, who's your father? Where are you from? Are you married? Sure. What do? You want the story, you want the quote, and but you're no male, a male. I tell you, a male journalist will get tea in the first 5 minutes. That is the difference. Your tea will come 15 minutes later after the person is satisfied that okay, this person can probably question me, is competent. So every minute you have to prove yourself to every person you come across. This is something that hasn't changed. In many years, when I started out, it was the same. When it still happens now, you have to prove. So this is again a big challenge. So you have to be aware about the expectations, what you are, how are you placed. In the present environment, there is a lot of hostility for people who are not from the right religion, from the right caste. These things are going on, even and in the newsroom. There is a lot of hostility in the newsroom as well. She was speaking about being the ideal, perfect person to support. It is very true. It is very true. Even in the newsroom, you're scrutinized. Oh, you're married. Why are you not wearing your Mangal Sutra? I mean, questions. Why you don't look married is something. Is anybody to decide how we look? And these are very annoying on the surface and very disturbing. Why are we subject to such scrutiny? And a lot of women cannot handle these questions because it already shows you that this environment is going to be hostile. Posh is something we are very aware now. A lot of organizations, media organizations have it. I would recommend a mandatory, I think this is you have to have a mandatory session every year where people are physically present. If you are virtually aware, you should be there with your camera on, and everybody from the editor has to attend. It is not just limited to only people in the newsroom, only certain people. It doesn't work that way, and it's not just a PowerPoint presentation. There has to be a person actually conducting it. There is no way otherwise. If you have noticed on social media, at least, Posh has become a meme now. You have a lot of reels where people make, a bunch of men are like, oh, careful, don't say that, Posh act, you'll get fired. That is the attitude, that is what we're trying to avoid. So this happens like anywhere in newsrooms too. This is not to, the whole idea is to, get to work together, right? We are bringing men and women together to make sure that it can be a good environment to work in, which is why it is needed. Nobody has the right to say, I don't need this. Posh training is required, Posh training is mandatory. Why we say that check if there is an IC and who is in it, because who is in it is also important. People have ICs with very weird, one external factor whom nobody would know would ever be able to contribute properly to that. Or some people in the IC whom you probably know should not be in it because they probably have a prior complaint against them. So these things matter. For your safety, the thing is when reporters enter, they do not think about their own safety in the newsroom. What is talked about is when we talk about safety, typically we are talking about really conflict areas and war zones, but that is not true. We face hostility everywhere. And why should we face it? Why should we subject ourselves to it? One of the first things, when you question like that, you know that it's not okay to keep quiet. You have to speak up. You might not win all the battles, but you have to start a conversation. Because those conversations need to happen. I've seen women reporters asked to go on ridiculous assignments as a method of domination. And the younger ones cannot object. The younger ones can, I don't know how to describe it, but really it's not much different from being asked to fetch coffee and tea. So that is how bad it gets. And because they're so, obviously anybody newcomer is worried about the safety of their job, whether they're going to get fired, is the review going to be okay, and these are potential weapons to hold over their head. So networking is very important. Shaina is sitting there, NWMI, very active member of NWMI. Organizations like that help. part of it as well, although I'm just a quiet watcher, but there is a lot of activity, there is a lot of support. When you have that support, man, it makes a huge difference. And even in the newsrooms, you're not, I previously mentioned the Old Boys Network. A women's network is not necessarily a women's network again. It is a network of like-minded people who just want a good newsroom. That means involving both men and women. That also means for the women to point out when men are not behaving properly, when there is a posh, when there is an icy, when there are offhand comments, when there is an attempt to manipulate. It means speaking out. It's not always pleasant. And, but something that has to happen. Now, so this is some of the things for coverage on the ground, when reporters are going on the ground. This is something we are now implementing far more. Earlier, there was not such a tracking system where you knew, where you follow where your reporter went. But now we have to do this. When people, when our reporter from Dharmasthala started covering Dharmasthala issue, I don't know how many of you are familiar here.
Maybe just brief description.
Yeah, so Dharmasthala is a temple town in Karnataka where there were allegations of a very influential family being responsible for some crimes, but mostly it was about a person who turned up, a whistleblower who turned up and says, I buried hundreds of bodies and there was no accounting for these bodies. There was foul play. And that's it. This is a conversation that has been happening for more than 10-15 years. So it blew up big this year. So when we sent our reporter there, a very young person in her 20s, also a local, people knew who she was. People knew who she was from the local area, she knew the local language. And the people opposing, there was a lot of hatred towards media. Another thing you see these days, they hate you when they say you're from the media, man, woman, it doesn't matter. They're always skeptical, everybody knows you're up to everybody thinks you're up to no good. So in this situation, we had a person who had to travel taking local transport every day, who had to be there in the thick of the issue, who was surrounded by people really angry with the media. And she stayed there for 1.5 months. It was extremely scary for us. She was being followed. People knew who she was, because we make a lot of videos, you also become immediately identifiable, right? People can recognize, people do watch a lot of videos far more than they read. So for us, we had to. And at the end of the day, it was such a terrible trial for her, because it used to be so much, constantly on your guard. Imagine this is not even a war-like situation, or this is not even a conflict situation. So it had to be, we used to talk every day, get it out of the system, talk to some, during the day we had to make sure she had to report, she had to tell everybody, her two editors, where she was going to be at any given time, how much time is she going to spend there. But most of all, we used to come back to her again and again, make sure she's safe, she's following precautions. Because such a young woman, there is an extra responsibility on us to hopefully not turn her away from journalism after the experience. We want her to work. So we have to put that in place. We have to. It was a system we followed naturally. It was a system set in place. It worked well. And of course we have a lot of defamation cases, but that's apart. But that's not for the coverage. This we say newsroom should ask female reporters, because obviously there are always two kinds of reporters who want to jump into any situation where there is a problem, who want to run into it, and there are people who are not okay with it for whatever reasons. And both are okay. So it is better to check with whether they want to be in unsafe crowds, because again, when it's a woman in an unsafe crowd, we get molested very easily. Women have experienced it. Any crowded place you go, you do get molested, you get manhandled, roughed up. So some people, reporters might not want this, and that's okay. That's okay not to want to go into that, because when you go into the situation, it's not really possible to protect yourself. A few months ago, there was a stampede in Bangalore at a cricket stadium. People came to wish, lakhs and lakhs of people came in, and unfortunately for us, we had girl interns, and they were raring to go. They were raring to go, and I didn't want, because our office is also very close to the stadium, and they absolutely wanted to be in the middle of it. And now I can't say no, because if they want to experience it, they're here for the job. But I had to make sure, I had to make everybody give me their live locations. They had to check in with me every 45 minutes. So I had to set these systems in place. I was a nervous wreck by the end of it, but the girls seemed to be pretty much unscathed. But the thing is, we need to look out for that. We need to offer that protection. It is only right, because if you are identified as a media that is pro, anti-establishment, whatever it is, you're labeled now. Everybody is great on labels now. You write a story and within 5 minutes somebody is labeling you something bad on social media. There is no way to avoid. But these are not just on the social media. This has on the ground implications as well. People recognize us. People say, okay, you did that story. You said this. This happens on the ground, and it is scary. It did happen to journalist again. She had filed a complaint about a person stalking women on social media, and she was approached in the field. And the only reason she recognized him, because she had seen a picture that the police had provided, because they had filed a complaint, taken up a complaint based on her story. What do you do? It is very scary. And she immediately called us, what do we do? So then we had to inform the police. We made sure that she left the area. We made sure she had. So these are things that really didn't happen like 10 years ago. Social media has had its share of challenges for us as well. So we have to keep all this in mind. One of the things, this is specifically about, what does it mean to be a woman when you're covering whatever it is, whether it is politics, whether it is current affairs, whether it's a road accident. There are some places, there are certain issues that lend a lot of depth to your stories because of who you are, where you come from, what are your lived experiences. It does not mean that if you want to be a feminist writer, it does not mean restricting yourself to certain topics. It does mean lending your point of view to whatever your understanding of what you're experiencing. So we want people to go beyond your usual reporting. And for one of the experiences I suggest crime reporting, very routine. I have seen graphic descriptions of crime go in copies in newspaper writing, and I'm thinking, imagine a reader having breakfast in the morning, reading about a woman's head bashed in, clothes torn, a very vivid graphic description. Now, as a reader, you're horrified. I mean, you can't get over it. But I'm thinking about the reporter who's written it, who's so desensitized that they do not even understand what the implication of it is. This person must be writing for themselves. They're definitely not writing for the readers. So, typically when it comes to violence, we are very careful. Right? Why do people need to know somebody's head was bashed and my brain was melted? Brain was split open like a coconut is a phrase I'll never forget that I read in a paper about a crime. Do we need to put that? So what does that mean? These are phrases, these are things that you need to have, you really give a deep thought and wonder, do I need to say this? At the same time, there are terminologies that you can introduce as women which you feel is more appropriate. I can't think of something related to that, but for example, this is the other example I'll give, because when we write non-vegetarian, I hate that term. Why? What? I mean, there are so much implied in that, a non-vegetarian. It implies so much. It implies that the country is predominantly vegetarian. It implies that non-vegetarian is an unpreferred trait. It speaks of something that should not be done. So many things. Yeah, meat eater. So this is something that we specifically say. Now what we are using for suicide guidelines, right? We no longer say committed suicide.
We can say non-meat eater too.
Can do, exactly.
Maybe the term used instead of victims. Before they used to say victims of rape, or
Now we
they say
use survivors. We use survivors, yes. So these are conscious decisions. Now, it's not just the women who should be doing that, it's everybody, whoever is writing. And that conversation cannot happen if women are doing this by themselves without talking about it, without objecting to how something is covered. So what I keep going back is engage people in your newsroom. Make your concerns known. Object to something if something is wrong. If you see your morning paper and say, why on earth are we writing this? Talk about it to your editor. Talk about it with your bosses. Talk about it. Object. There's so many things which are to get transgender persons, right? It's such a big, tall, how much it takes to just write transgender or trans person. It's a trans woman, it's a trans man, it's just trans. What does that even mean? A person using this term is not even bothering to figure out what it means, who they are representing. So this is the point where I also like to say, maybe some might object, that we do look at these things, drawing up glossaries for how we represent certain people, incidents, terms that we use, and it does make a difference. And this is why women really, really ought to speak, because a lot of that work that happens, which is very callous, are directed towards women. Crime I have seen. So typically, if you get so desensitized, then there is no difference. This is what we are constantly trying to avoid. How can you avoid it? When you have conversations constantly. That is the only way. It didn't happen earlier. It didn't happen at all earlier. You used to have the editor, you used to have your big bosses, and used to be this rat scurrying around filing your daily reports, and nobody used to bother anything. It's okay. But that is not the case now. Everybody has a responsibility. It's also social media, right? Earlier, if you write in a newspaper, then it means what your readers say, whatever your circulation is. But now the same thing on social media takes a different avatar altogether. The same thing you can convey. And the earlier session you heard about online harassment as well. God forbid if you get up in the morning and decide, okay, I have an opinion on something, and if you're a woman, 5 minutes later you can imagine, oh my God, the kind of things, the names that are called. Really? I mean, at this point, I feel like saying, please be more creative, give us something new. I mean, we are tired of hearing the same, I don't know, feminazi, that, this, and everything can be turned into a bad thing, the same slut whore kind of. That also, by the way, adds to mental health issues. Can we all shrug it off? Because this is the thing that we hear most when we file complaints. A lot of women do go to police stations, even as journalists. We can admit a lot of times we do get a more patient hearing because we are journalists. We do have that power to approach somebody, police, and lodge complaint. And then the solution is simple. Don't look at it. Don't bother with it. Forget all this. Don't check it. Doesn't work that way. It cannot be that it cannot be unaddressed at all. So yeah, we're still working on the details of what can happen. But yes, please do file complaints against your colleagues if they have a problem, against people in the field if they have a problem, if they have misbehaved, if they have assaulted, if they have said things. Please use the law. How useful the law is by itself once it starts is debatable, but at least start the process. This is for people, yes, so this works both ways. When you have a complaint, if you find somebody to listen to you, it also means that you're also ready to listen to somebody else who has a complaint. So that forms a good network. And this can be not just within your newsroom, it can be other news media organizations as well. If you're working in a city long enough, obviously you will know a lot of people across newspapers, right? It's a small community, it's not very big. And that is the kind of support that is needed, because we are trying if a person is accused of and has, if there is a complaint against somebody misbehaving, what are the repercussions for that person? What are the consequences for that person? Because POSH does not do anything, it does not penalize in that way. In fact, even if a person is found, having committed that act, whatever under POSH, the consequences are not much. Sometimes it's just a slap on the wrist. Sometimes it's a warning that they get. After a woman has gone to the extent of complaining, standing by it, pursuing it, what happens? Man gets a thing saying, you got a warning, don't do it again, woman quits. Now, women quitting is a story by in itself. We have seen in the last 15-20 years, I have seen at least ever since I started, so many women quitting. Why do they quit? Of course, various reasons including maybe your home, but a lot of it is related to your workplace environment, the hostility faced. Up till, I don't know, even now in some places, it is not difficult to come back after a maternity leave. It is very, very difficult because they just want you to leave. They know that you have a child, that your focus is on that, and God forbid if that happens, you're not going to do any justice to your work, so you have just an extra salary that we are paying, so please leave. If there is a complaint of somebody misbehaving within the newsroom, oh my God, you're a troublemaker. They make it so difficult that women quit. In some cases, they're gaslighted. You have imagined quit argument, I love it. My God, the kind of things women must imagine, wake up and decide, okay, I'm going to give a completely fabricated complaint because I have no better things to do. So women quit. After years, after 5 years, after 10 years, after 15 years, they quit because it becomes so untenable at work, right? There is so much workplace harassment. So this is why a network with other women also matters, other journalists. So I do come across a lot of complaints that are filed in other organizations under POSH. So we keep track. What is the, what has the IC decided? And almost in only one case did the girl not resign. That is because the guy resigned first. But he got a job twice from people who knew there were complaints against him. So there was no repercussions for him at all. And the office promised him that this person will be blacklisted by other organizations. No such thing happened. So these are still things that we are trying, but we know that this person, but we stopped, the minute we heard, we stopped, if they're freelance, then we accept contributions, we stopped accepting the contribution because we knew this person had a complaint. So these are little small things that we can do. We can definitely offer emotional support. We also offer, if you have a link that can also help you reach out to people in those various organizations and bring light on the matter. The complainant might be are usually very afraid. They're mostly young. They'll be under 30 years in a lot of cases. They just don't want to draw that attention to themselves because immediately they are worried. I'm going to be called a troublemaker. I don't want to do that. How will they bleed? So one of the things we also tell is, please, if there is a problematic behavior, if you can get if there are messages, for instance, screenshots, keep the documentation so you can make your case stronger, because even beyond the office, there can be mechanisms evolved. But to work for that, at least the women have to stick around, and we have lost a lot. So there is a constant effort to see that the woman doesn't quit in a huff. But it so frequently happens. Even after it goes to the IC, sometimes women quit because they're so fed up with the system. So during COVID, I think it was the first time and many of the companies offered counselors for employees to deal with, because there was a lot of trauma at that point, even for reporters working. I'm sure many of them who worked through COVID, if you remember, I was not working in the media organization at that time. I was on something else. But something the journalists came back to me time and again and were telling me is how troubled they were with the constant calls for hospital beds. It's something they constantly kept hearing, right? People were pleading with them constantly to find a bed, for instance. And there were no beds available. There was nothing anybody could do. Nobody could use influence. That was one time, there was no influence happening. No calls to any minister would help. Nothing would help because there were no beds. At that time, it was very, very traumatizing for the journalists as well, because beyond the numbers whom everybody knew at that point, we were underreported. That was another cause of trauma. Because there are so many people around you doing, and they're just not making it to the whatever statistics they are. A lot of this, at that time, some of the organizations did offer counselors, therapists. This is something that can be considered for organizations full time. Big organizations can afford. Medium-sized organizations also can afford. So because what happens is, why we are saying is, first of all, we don't identify trauma that is happening to us. We don't think it can happen to us. End of the day, you're saying, I'm fine, it's good. But you're just having that, an extra drink, a few more smokes than normal. You're snapping at something, you don't want to do anything, you don't want to go anywhere. So it does help to have therapy. So the first step is to understand that it can affect us. It does not show us in a poor light. Obviously, we're all humans. We are terribly impacted by what we come, especially when we speak to victims of violence, victims of brutality. Anybody going through any hardships, it can be difficult. You finish that, you do your work, you file your story, you got your ducks in a row, but you are not thinking about yourself and the impact that is had. So the first step is to identify, accepting that this affects you. That is the first step. Talking about it helps. If you can do it, even with your peers, it helps. So you have to get to this step. So at this point is where we want a situation where newsrooms should offer counselors, therapists, because left it to yourself, you're not going to go. First of all, you're going to complain therapists are so expensive these days, man. That's the first thing we hear. So you're not going to do it by yourself. It is the responsibility of the organization to provide this psychological help because your mental wellness, it does show. It shows. In print media, we have this thing where every 4 years we say, oh, the journalist is burnt out. So they go through a slump. That is how it's explained. It's a burnout. What is that burnout really? It's just accumulation of a whole lot of stress which we pretended didn't exist. And then it hit us one day. So at least now that we have these conversations, open conversations about mental health, it is time we can expect it. So this is what it means. We want a newsroom culture where journalists feel safe, supported and respected, clear, confidential ways to seek help if something goes wrong. The difference it makes when you enter a newsroom and you feel supported is phenomenal. That leaves you safe to pursue your job to the best of your ability. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting a battle on a lot of fronts and you're not going to end up the winner always. So, this is for Safe Newsrooms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've tackled a lot of important